Good evening, everybody. I'm the clerk to the Governance and Audit Committee, and the first item of business on the agenda tonight is to appoint a chair for this meeting. Councillors, can I have a nomination, please?
I nominate Councillor Natalie Summers.
Thank you. Councillors, are there any other nominations? In that case, are you happy for Councillor Summers to proceed as chair? Thank you. Councillor Summers, to you.
Right. Good evening and welcome to this meeting of the Governance and Audit Committee Hearings Subcommittee on Thursday the 19th of March 2026. I'm Councillor Natalie Summers and I'm Councillor for St Anne's St John's Ward, and I'll be chairing the meeting this evening. To begin, there are a few matters of housekeeping. Action in the event of an emergency. There are no practice alarms planned for this evening, so if an alarm sounds, please evacuate the Town Hall by going down the main staircase or the back staircase to the High Street and then to the car park behind the Town Hall in St Runwald Street. This meeting is being held in the Grand Jury Room in the Town Hall in Colchester and is being recorded and video streamed over the internet via the Council's YouTube channel. Please, would speakers use microphones at all times and speak directly into the microphone. Members of the committee may use electronic devices to access their meeting papers, and visitors are welcome to use mobile phones and other devices, including cameras, but please use them discreetly, set them to silent, and do not use voice or camera flash functions. There are toilets on every floor in the building and an induction loop in this room. The provisions in the Constitution around the timings of breaks will apply to this meeting, and accordingly we will take a break at 19:30 hours. This hearing will be conducted in accordance with the Council's Hearings Subcommittee Procedure Guidance, which can be found at pages 58 to 60 of the agenda pack. Now, introductions. I will now ask members of the committee and attending officers to introduce themselves, starting on my left.
Sam McLean, Newtown and Christchurch Warden.
Sarah Blacker, independent person.
Andrew Weavers, Head of Governance and Monitoring Officer.
Paula Clowes, Head of Assurance for Essex County Council and the investigating officer in this matter.
Matthew Evans, Democratic Services Officer.
Councillor Suli Seymour.
Good evening, Councillor Paul Dundas, Tiptree Ward.
Thank you, everyone. Right, substitutions. We're not aware of any substitutions. Item 4 is urgent items. There are no urgent items. Number 5, declarations of interest. Councillors will be asked to say if there are any items on the agenda about which they have a disclosable pecuniary interest or any other registrable interest or non-registrable interest which would prevent them from participating in any discussion of the item or participating in any vote on the item. No, all good, thank you. Right, item 6, Code of Conduct Complaint. The Hearings Subcommittee will consider a report requesting that it determines a Code of Conduct complaint. Councillor Lissamore, do you wish to briefly outline your position at all before we get into the report?
If I can just say, thank you very much to the committee for their time on this. This is the first complaint that I've had from a resident in 20 years as a councillor, so taken the matter very, very seriously. Our team have looked very seriously and we've held an internal investigation into what has happened and to try and reassure residents that we have taken every opportunity to review it, and when we do surveys in the future there will be ample opportunity for residents to review some of their comments they may have made in the past or to take into account whether they have changed their minds over any particular issues. It was a very fraught process going through these TROs, not helped, I'll be honest, by the North Essex Parking Partnership, who kept moving the goalposts from past applications that we'd made to them. But I just wanted to underline how seriously that we have taken these allegations.
Thank you, Councillor Lissamore. I now invite Paula Clowes, Head of Assurance, Essex County Council, to present her report.
Thank you very much, Chair. So I will make the assumption that members of the committee have had the opportunity to read my detailed report and the supporting documents. So I'll take you through a high-level summary of the report now, and clearly I can then take any questions once I've done that. So, as you're all aware, I was asked to conduct a joint investigation on behalf of Colchester City Council and Essex County Council. As you will see from the report, there were 4 complaints made to Colchester City Council, and these complaints were received from 3 complainants. These complainants were Mr Robert Bloomfield, Mr Stuart Spindler and Councillor Martin Goss. The full details of these complaints are outlined for you on page 16 and 17 of your packs. All of the complaints relate directly or indirectly to a proposed traffic regulation order that was put forward to the NEP, which is the parking partnership, by Councillor Lissamore in relation to Oaklands Avenue, Colchester. In summary, Mr Bloomfield complained that Councillor Lissamore had included him as a resident who agreed to the red line proposal for the junction of President Road and Oaklands Avenue. He said he could categorically state he was never asked or canvassed about this proposal. He said that this was not acting with integrity and honesty, and plus it was a lack of or exercise of care and diligence. Mr Spindler complained that Councillor Lissamore had attempted to influence the chair of the NEP, Councillor Paul Honeywood. He said that he was unhappy with Councillor Lissamore's approach and language in a WhatsApp exchange. And lastly, Councillor Goss complained that Councillor Lissamore had made a serious accusation about him on a WhatsApp chat with a resident. Within the detailed report, paragraphs 5.1 to 5.8, which start on page 10 of your pack, outline the events that preempted these complaints. Within the report, I have included quite a lot of background information because I thought it was relevant to how we ended up in a situation where a number of complaints came in. As you can see, in terms of the submission of the application for a traffic regulation order, Councillor Lissamore stepped away from what was considered at the time to be standard practice at the NEP and did not include a signed petition as supporting evidence. When it was put out for consultation, the NEP received a very large number of objections, 45, and NEP officers informed me that this was one of the highest number of objections that they had ever received in relation to a particular TRO. In paragraph 5.9 of the report, we can see that Mr Bloomfield initially made contact with Councillor Lissamore on the 8th of May 2025, and it would seem clear from the tone of his correspondence that he was very much against the proposal and had no idea at this time that his name had been included as a supporter. Mr Bloomfield then contacted the NEP and discovered that his name was included in an email as being a confirmed supporter, and he was clearly very upset and angry about this, which led ultimately to him making a complaint. Councillor Lissamore was asked by Andrew Weavers, the Colchester City Council monitoring officer, to comment on the allegation being made by Mr Bloomfield. Within this correspondence, Councillor Lissamore stated, "I do not believe we knocked or delivered letters to Mr Bloomfield on these occasions because he lived too far away from the junction, because again we were following NEP guidance." She also added, "I never said he agreed to the lines because I never spoke to him about it." When Councillor Lissamore was interviewed by me as part of the investigation, she said she had no knowledge of speaking to Mr Bloomfield, and at the time no notes or records were available to her to confirm who had said what in relation to the consultation. At around this time, another resident, Stuart Spindler, made contact with Councillor Lissamore via WhatsApp. The screenshots of this WhatsApp exchange are included in your documents labelled as SS2. Via a very long WhatsApp exchange over 2 evenings, Mr Spindler made it clear that he and a number of other residents were very unhappy about the proposal. Mr Spindler's complaint was submitted shortly after this exchange. During the exchange, Mr Spindler brought up the name of Councillor Goss. He used the phrase, "This smells of corruption." In response, Councillor Lissimore sent a message back regarding Councillor Goss. This is printed in full on page 27 of your papers. To summarise, Councillor Lissimore said that Councillor Goss had interfered in Prettygate and put his own plan through without consulting. Mr Spindler shared this message with Councillor Goss, who subsequently complained to Colchester City Council monitoring officer. When Councillor Lissimore was asked by the monitoring officer to comment on the complaint from Councillor Goss, Councillor Lissimore said that in an email that she thought the complaints were politically motivated. The full response from Councillor Lissimore to Andrew Weavers on this is in your document pack at AW2, but it does not fully address the real issue of the complaint. When asked in interview by myself if she thought it was sensible to get involved in a discussion with a resident about another councillor, Councillor Lissimore said she considered it to be a private conversation as she believed what she said was true, it wasn't an issue, and so she did not believe that she had breached the code of conduct. Having considered all of the findings and evidence when I conducted my investigation, I found it's my view that in relation to the complaint made by Mr Bloomfield that a breach of the member code of conduct has occurred because Mr Bloomfield's name was inappropriately included by Councillor Lissimore as a supporter of the TRO. There was no clear justification or supporting evidence at the time for the inclusion of his name. Councillor Lissimore has stated that she did not recall speaking to Mr Bloomfield and had no notes available of any visits, which in my view would seem reckless and certainly not acting with integrity and due care and diligence. This action may lower the public's confidence in Councillor Lissimore and Colchester City Council. This act could also be perceived by the public as being dishonest and as leads to the role of councillor being brought into disrepute. In relation to the complaints made by Mr Spindler, I concluded that no breaches of the code of conduct had occurred. I did feel, however, that by entering into a protracted late-night WhatsApp exchange with a resident could potentially be viewed as poor judgment, and I did make a recommendation about this in my report. In relation to the complaint made by Councillor Goss, it is my view as the investigator that a breach of the code of conduct has occurred, namely section 7, treating councillors with respect, and also not bringing the role of councillor into disrepute. My full conclusions are outlined in your packs on page 19 to 21 of your papers. Other than that, I will take questions.
Thank you, Paula. I'll now invite members of the committee to ask any questions. We're requested to determine whether Councillor Lissimore has not failed to comply with the Members' Code of Conduct and no further action needs to be taken in respect of some or all the matters considered at the hearing, or whether Councillor Lissimore has failed to comply with the Members' Code of Conduct but that no further action needs to be taken in respect or all of some of the matters considered at the hearing, or C, Councillor Lissimore has failed to comply with the Members' Code of Conduct in respect of all or some of the matters considered at the hearing and that a formal resolution should be made to the full council.
Chair, could I just say, on your procedure note, can I point you towards paragraph 3.2 to invite Councillor Lissimore to respond to the investigating officer.
Oh, right. Would you like to respond, Sue?
Thank you. As I've said, this has been a very long, drawn-out, fraught procedure. The team at Prettygate had already made one application for junction protection scheme in Baden-Powell Drive and had done surveys, had dropped letters, dropped leaflets around to residents. We believed that there was an 80%, roughly 80% compliance agreement to the scheme. We put an application into the NEP saying that we believed that there was at least 80% agreement, and the NEP took up the application, did their own survey, found yes, a number of residents were in agreement, and the scheme went ahead. So when we did the scheme for Oaklands Avenue, we followed exactly the same procedure. We knocked on doors, we dropped letters round, we dropped leaflets round. We knocked on doors 4, 5, 6 times. We did not just go once. We went at different times of the day. We went weekends, we went evenings. We also dropped leaflets round and we dropped letters round, sort of different formats, so that we could get as much information from residents as possible. As councillors that are here, we know we have no agenda on these items. Either residents want TROs or they don't. But we wanted to make sure that we spoke to as many residents as we possibly could. When Mr. Weavers first brought the complaint to me, I'll be honest, I mixed up Mr. Bloomfield. I thought he lived further down the road. So when I said that we had not knocked on his door and had not dropped any leaflets, I thought that was because he lived further away from what the NEP had suggested would be the area that we would canvass. Obviously, it became apparent that we had canvassed Mr. Bloomfield. No, I do not personally remember doing it. It might have been myself. I wasn't perhaps as distinctive looking then as I am now, but it might have been another member of the team. But the application was made in my name, so therefore the statement that he was in approval went under my name, and I accept full responsibility for that. So Mr. Bloomfield would have had a number of different forms of correspondence, not just one knock on the door. He would have had a number of correspondence. I do remember speaking to another resident in the area, an elderly lady, who had a husband who had regular carers coming in. And I remember speaking to her and particularly pointing out, because she said, doesn't bother me, we've got plenty of space, we're fine. I said, are you sure, you know, if your husband has carers coming in, are you sure there's going to be enough parking for them? No, it's absolutely fine. I went back a second time, knocked on their door, and she said, actually, a neighbour has been round and has made, and it was a female resident, it wasn't Mr. Bloomfield, has made me aware that other residents are against this scheme, and I'm not sure, I don't know what to do now. I feel a little bit bullied into being against it when, you know, I don't really have a problem with it. So I do particularly remember that conversation. We believed that there was roughly an 80% approval. We want to make sure that we've spoken to, say, as many residents as we possibly can. And we put the application in genuinely believing that we had done all we could to speak to as many residents as we possibly could. The application took a very long time with the NEP because they kept moving the goalposts. We put the application in the same way that we had done with Baden Powell. Didn't hear anything. Contacted them, I think it was when some agenda papers came out. I saw that this application was on the agenda papers, but with nothing against it. And I asked them, they said, oh, we're waiting for more information. What information? It was then they said they wanted the names and addresses of the people that we'd spoken to. So we went back again, knocked on more doors, at least twice, if not 3 times, 4 times. If I was driving past the road on an odd day, I might go, oh, I've got a spare 10 minutes, I'll go and knock on a few more doors. So it was fairly casual. I did keep notes at the time. However, when I was asked about them for this investigation, any notes that I did have had been destroyed because we were talking about quite a few years down the line. This wasn't something that happened after a few sort of weeks or months. It was quite a few years, and I don't know how long you other councillors keep information, but I certainly don't keep that sort of information for years. Anyway, we got the names and addresses of residents, put the addresses in, but I redacted some of the more personal information like surnames, and the NEP came back and said, no, we need the full names of the residents. So again, I put the full names in. Then the NEP came back and said, no, we need postcodes as well. So I had to go back again and put the postcodes in, which I did. They only then did the NEP come back and say, we need a petition. He said, well, this has been going on. We never did a petition with Baden-Powell. We've never been asked for a petition. And that was then when I contacted Councillor Honeywood as the chair and said, what's going on? What's happening here? We have never been asked for a petition. He investigated and he found that within the wording, it said, e.g. a petition. Not you need a petition, you need evidence, e.g. a petition. And it was then decided that the application would then go forward. So Mr. Bloomfield's complaint, he would have had a number of leaflets and letters and a number of visits. I do believe that he has said that there were 3 applications in that road, one at each end and one in the middle. He seems to be saying that when we knocked on his door and spoke to him about it, we only spoke about the applications at the 2 ends of the road, and we didn't speak about the application in the middle. I cannot clarify that or not, because I do not recollect speaking to him, and I do not know whether it was one of the team that spoke to him, so I cannot confirm that that was the case or not. But that seems to be what he recollects, that we spoke about traffic regulation orders, particularly on the Dugard Avenue end of the road, and not the TRO in the middle of the road. It says in the notes here, I can categorically state I was never asked or canvassed about this proposal, only one that junctions Dugard Avenue. So when we spoke to him on the door, we would have mentioned all 3 applications, and most certainly the letters and leaflets that he had through the door spoke about all 3 applications, not just the one at Dugard Avenue. I think that's all I really need to say at that point on Mr. Bloomfield's complaint.
Does any councillor wish to have questions?
Thank you. I just want to begin first by establishing where Essex County Council are on this. Have Essex County Council had a similar committee hearing, or are they going to, or is it all going to be decided by Colchester? I just don't quite get what Essex's involvement is.
We had a hearing yesterday to consider Mr. Bloomfield's allegation, which was the only one that came to both councils. So that has been resolved yesterday. Yep.
Okay. And I just also want to see what we agree on, or what everybody agrees on, call it a statement of common ground or whatever. It's agreed by everybody now that Mr. Bloomfield didn't support it. Is that accepted? And that his inclusion in it was erroneous, if that's correct. Yeah, we all agree that he didn't support it. Okay. Reading the document pack, actually, it strikes terrible memories into my heart, because I hadn't realised that at that same NEP meeting, there was a Tiptree TRO considered, which caused me and my fellow councillors a great deal of anguish. Because what happened there was a very similar situation, actually, that it started off with proposals for either end of the road, either end of Anchor Road. The parish council did a survey, which seemed to imply support. This wasn't something the city councillors were involved in, this was the parish council. They put it forward to NEP. When NEP put the actual consultation out, it suddenly included red lines around all the roads, intermediate roads, which caused an absolute local storm. And then as city councillors, we also did some surveying. But what happened is when we spoke to NEP came back and said, we don't care what any of the surveys say from the parish council. We don't care what any of your surveys say as city councillors. They basically were very adamant the only survey they took any notice of whatsoever was their own consultation, which they ran, and they did, and they chose the criteria in terms of the distance from the lines and everything. And as it happened, what came back was that actually they withdrew the scheme and altered it and changed a lot of the red lines to yellow ones because there was concern about stopping and everything. So on this, you know, whatever the city councillors do, parish councillors or residents do, ultimately we agreed it is NEP's consultation which counts. That's what NEP told me. Is that our general understanding here on that?
In order for a TRO proposal to get to the NEP consultation stage, they require evidence of support from the local residents. So that it won't get to their consultation stage unless the evidence is given to them that there is generalised local support for it. I'm not a NEP expert. Obviously, I've learned a lot about this since doing this investigation. I understand they like to have a threshold of 80% support from local residents, and they also prefer to have a petition with signatures. However, as Councillor Lismore has already stated, there was some confusion in the lead up to this particular consultation beginning because there was confusion within the NEP policy about whether it was a mandatory requirement or just a suggested requirement to have a petition. NEP have since tweaked their policy. However, what I did find was that custom and practice was to provide petitions with proposed TROs. So the NEP officers worked to the basis that they would always receive a petition because that's how custom and practice had been working. And in this particular situation, with Councillor Lismore and her team, they had stepped away from that custom and practice, but it wasn't mandated within the policy. I think that's,
Yeah, because I don't think there was a petition for the Tiptree one, which ended up on the
Yeah,
same
so,
agenda.
but as I say,
And I think that was a survey done by the parish council. So I just wanted to clarify, you know, what the potential damage is that we couldn't, you know, I get why NEP don't want to start spending money doing consultations unless there's at least some reasonable evidence that there's a chance of there being support. But in terms of the councillors or anybody else getting a survey wrong or not doing it in a particularly scientific manner, there is that safety valve there that the final decision will only be taken on an actual proper consultation carried out by NEP. We agree on that.
I think in this particular situation, though, there was some surprise by the volume of objections that came through from local residents. The NEP officers had said to me that they'd never known so many objections to come in on one particular proposal.
Well, I don't know. You should have seen the result from Anchor Road. It was not pretty. But
luckily,
actually,
I didn't have to look into that one as well as this one.
To give a background on that, that was actually again over the similar area because the parish council had surveyed quite a wide area. And what came back is the people who used the road for access were in favour of it, because they wanted to be able to see around corners and get in and out faster. The people who were actually lived by it were very much against it. So the survey was totally skewed by which catchment area you picked. Okay, so on that, now we've also got, in terms of what's agreed, now we've got this accusation by Councillor Goss. I just want to be clear that the issue is the accusation that he interfered in something in the Prettygate ward. It's not that he's corrupt. In fact, it seems to be that it's stated clearly that it was actually Mr. Bloomfield who claimed that there was corruption going on. Is that correct? And that was then refuted.
Yes. So on page 27 of your pack, there is the full text of the WhatsApp exchange. And so, yes, so the words are, Martin Goss interfered in Prettygate as the Colchester representative of the NEP. He put his own plan through for Parr Drive without consulting with the local councillors. As soon as we heard about it, we got it stopped.
Excuse me, I thought that was Spindler who mentioned corruption, not Bob
Perhaps
Bloom.
it is.
It was Mr. Spindler that used the word corruption in the
pardon.
first message.
It's not, obviously WhatsApp doesn't give their names, so it's easy to get confused.
Yeah,
So
it was Mr. Spindler that said the word corruption
he
to
said,
start with.
I'm guessing a councillor has pushed a favour through, or maybe Martin Goss, this smells of corruption.
Yes,
Correct.
yes.
And then Councillor Liston went back and said that it's not corruption.
Yes, and then goes
I
on
just want to
say,
be clear, we haven't got councillors accusing each other of corruption. That's really what I'm trying to establish.
the allegation was interference and putting something through without consulting with local
Okay.
people,
Now,
local councillors.
in the document pack, Councillor Lissimore has provided a copy of a leaflet where Mr Loxley claims to have carried out work on Parr Drive red lines. So now Mr Loxley's not a councillor as far as I'm aware. So do we know what actually happened there? Because I mean, either somebody pushed something through in for him, or frankly Mr Loxley is lying. So do we know which is the correct case?
So Councillor Lissimore provided me with the leaflet as evidence of what she was saying. However, I was unclear of how that linked in with the particular scheme that I was looking at, and so I could not expand my investigation to start looking at these subsequent applications as well in relation to this. So that was out of scope of my investigation.
So, but they both refer to Parr Drive, so there's clearly something referred to, that somebody has done something at Parr Drive, but we don't know what or who. So there's a little lack of consistency there.
Well, Councillor Lissimore provided the leaflet, so it may be that she can provide the context now, because that, as I say, that was out of scope of my investigation.
Thank you. So with regard to Councillor Goss's complaint, I do feel very, very strongly that this is politically led. As I've stated in the documents, Councillor Goss has always taken a very prominent interest in Prettygate, shall we say, because he grew up there and his dad was the Prettygate councillor. And I think Councillor Goss has taken a stronger interest in Prettygate than perhaps any other ward apart from his own, going back to the last sort of 20 years. When the resident said these words, I'm guessing a councillor has pushed a favour through, or maybe Martin Goss, hey, this smells of corruption. Did that make me angry? No. Did it make me rattled? Yes. Now, I think we've all been in places as councillors where residents have said there's corruption, there's brown envelopes, that type of thing. And we all know how angry that makes us feel. However, I wasn't angry, but I was very rattled. Now, I do not agree with many things and many policies that Councillor Goss puts through. We've had our little spats, but absolutely under no circumstances is Councillor Goss corrupt. Absolutely not. So I was rattled that this resident had said that Councillor Goss was corrupt, was a corruption hinted at. I think I was clumsy, but what I was trying to show to the resident, that yes, Councillor Goss has in the past been involved in issues that have happened in Prettygate. And I gave this Parr Drive one as an example. Now again, we're going back here to May 2022, so this is what I remember of the issue. And the reason I particularly remember it was May of 2022 because I was on holiday and I got a WhatsApp message from a resident saying that a letter had been put round Parr Drive saying that following work that had been done, a new parking scheme was going ahead and double red lines were going to be installed in Parr Drive. And that leaflet was from John Loxley, who was the Lib Dem candidate at the time in Prettygate. There was also a subsequent leaflet that was put round by the Lib Dems with a sort of a map of where we've been doing work, and this Parr Drive was included. Red lines in Parr Drive was included on that map. At the time, John Loxley was the Prettygate candidate, but Councillor Goss was the leader of the Lib Dems and he was also their electoral agent. Now, I don't know how the Lib Dems work, but every leaflet that we put through has to be put through our agent. This is how our group works. So I would find it very difficult to believe that 2 leaflets were printed that Councillor Goss did not have any involvement with. I'm also aware that in the past, Councillor Loxley and Mr. Loxley has, doesn't necessarily have the ability himself to do printing and things, and that Councillor Goss has done printing for him in the past. So I found it very difficult to believe that Councillor Goss was not involved. However, once I came back off holiday and I spoke to this resident again, she said to me on the telephone that someone knocked on her door in Parr Drive and said, "I am Councillor Martin Goss." Now, I only have this resident's word for it. She has no reason to make that up. I have no reason to disbelieve it. He's not particularly known in Prittygate. If somebody sees me walk past their house, there's quite a high chance they'll know me because I'm quite distinctive now. But if Councillor Goss walked past their house, they wouldn't know. So if she has said, Councillor Martin Goss, why would I disbelieve her? That is why I used this example. I was trying to show evidence that Councillor Goss had been involved in schemes in the past in Prittygate, which is why he may be involved in, this particular scheme in Oaklands Avenue. And he would be involved not because there is a hint of corruption, absolutely no. He is involved because he does get involved in Prittygate issues. That was why, as I say, clumsy, perhaps. But yes, I was rattled. Perhaps I shouldn't have been. I wasn't angry because I think after 20 years' experience, we're used to dealing with residents who say, oh, brown envelopes, But that's why I included that text. That's why I mentioned it. To actually say, under no circumstances is Councillor Goss corrupt. Absolutely not.
Thank you, Councillor Small. Have you any further questions?
Just for clarity, we're reading through, it's with Mr. Spindler, isn't it? The thing. Just for clarity, reading through it, I think it's.
Sorry. Hold on.
Yeah.
Could I just come back on that point about the WhatsApp exchange and Councillor Goss? Is that okay?
Yes, that's fine. Thank you.
I think we just need to not get distracted about the substance and whether there was any truth or not in relation to what was said about Councillor Goss. The finding within the report of the breach is about the nature of which these comments were made in a WhatsApp exchange with a unknown resident. In my view, as the investigator, did not feel like the appropriate place for those statements about Councillor Goss to be made. Whether true or not, Councillor Goss denies them, and I do think we need to be mindful of that. We are not, Councillor Goss's actions are not under question here. And so I just think we need to be careful that the breach that we are considering is the way that the comments were made and to whom they were made.
Thank you very much.
So just for clarity, I mean, firstly, reading through the WhatsApp exchange, it seems to be Mr. Spindler who first mentioned Councillor Goss. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
So just for clarity, the phrases you're particularly concerned about are the Martin Goss interfered in Prittygate as the cultural representative of the NEP. Is that the phrase which you're concentrating on? Okay, just for clarity.
Yeah. And yes, I mean, I fully recognised the tone that Mr. Spindler took in his WhatsApp exchange, and I did not uphold his complaints as part of my investigation.
Thank you, Paula. Councillor McLean, you had some questions?
Thank you. Could you tell me more about the survey you did and about the process of which you gathered the data and stored the data and how many respondents it had?
Okay, certainly. Again, this is only going back through memory because this happened a very long time ago. what the team would do, well, what we did here is when the NEP sort of said we are accepting new applications for double red lines, the first application we put in, as I said, was another road, which went through successfully. The next level of complaint, next number of complaints that we'd got was on this Oaklands Avenue, was on this particular road, which is why we then made an application for this. And I particularly remember we hold street surgeries every year where we say, you know, we're going to be on the corner of this road at 6 o'clock or whatever. And I remember the previous year having a street surgery and having, I think there were about 15 residents came out to speak to us, all complaining about the same thing, about people parking on this junction in the middle of Oaklands Avenue, in the middle of this road. And I particularly remember it because we pointed out one car that was parked too close to the junction, and one of the complainants actually admitted that it was her car. That's why I remember it, because it seemed quite ironic at the time. So that's why we made an application for this. What we then do is knock on doors, and as I say, we went back, I would say at least 5-6 times. We knocked on doors at different times of the day, the evenings, weekends. We don't tend to knock on doors on Sunday because we respect people's family time, but we certainly knocked on doors at different times. And this was following the NEP procedure on how many properties, the area that you should cover when you're looking at a particular scheme. We were disappointed, I remember, of the small amount of people that we'd managed to speak to because, you know, people just weren't in or just weren't answering their doors. So we did do a number of letters and a number of leaflets. I believe if I remember rightly, the letters would have been Dear Resident rather than Dear Mr. Smith or whatever. They wouldn't have been addressed necessarily, but they would have been, you know, a typewritten, folded piece of paper rather than being in an envelope as well. We then, if I remember right, we put leaflets around it well that would have been more graphic, perhaps with photographs and things like that. So we were very, very clear on the areas, that it was 3 areas in that road that were being looked at. It was also, we also put it on our Facebook page, which at the time had about 7,000 members. Again, I cannot gauge how many of those members lived in that particular road, but we certainly put it on Facebook. And it was also mentioned in our main In Touch leaflet, which goes out to sort of 4,500 homes as well. We then, when we're knocking on doors, we either have a copy of the electoral roll with us, or we may just have a clipboard with a piece of paper. So again, I cannot remember exactly what we had with this particular road, but we would make a note and say, you know, number 23, Mr. Smith, against, or Mr. Smith has concerns about where the lines would end or something like whatever. We would make notes like that. It was then from those notes that we then passed the information onto the NEP. When particularly Mr. Bloomfield contacted me, I recommended that he spoke to the NEP because, as I think the independent person noted, we did our own survey to get as accurate amount of information as we possibly could. We did not rely on the main NEP petition, or main survey that they do. However, we were still very aware, and what the NEP had told us and what we'd done in Baden-Powell was it was very much a sort of a finger in the air survey. What's the feeling? Do you think there's 80% approval? That was what the NEP had told us they wanted to know. And if we felt, after speaking to residents, that there was at least 80% approval, it could then go forward. As I say, it was never ever mentioned to us, either with the previous application or with this application, that they wanted a petition. If we'd have known that, we would have done a petition. and we would have got a signature so that we could have shown that, you know, if we spoke to Mr Bloomfield, that he was in agreement with it, for example. But that is the procedure that we went through.
Yeah, I also asked about where you kept the data, how you kept the records, and how many respondents.
Again, I think from
Roughly how many respondents?
I think from what the what I said yesterday, I think there were 8 names that were put forward to the NEP.
Yeah, on the email that you sent, I think it was 8 names.
Yeah, eight names were put forward as being in agreement. But certainly, as I say, from my recollection of speaking to this elderly lady who lived in the area, there was an air of, as Councillor Dundas has perhaps gone to, an air of concern from residents that there was more to this than they sort of thought. They might have said originally, yes, yeah, I can't see a problem. But as things developed, they were perhaps a little bit more concerned with the knock-on effect of double red lines or whatever. But we trusted the NEP system in that they would do a full survey. And we're not traffic officers. We're not highway engineers. We cannot say exactly where a red line would start and where a red line would end. We trusted the NEP to do that information because they are trained highways officers. We are not. So we very much relied on the NEP survey to do that minute detail as well. Is this red line going to continue outside my house or not? Well, no, I don't believe, going from what we've done in past roads, no, I don't believe it would, but these are highly trained highways engineers and they will decide exactly where the line will end. With regards to it would have been loose paper copies that I would have kept for a certain period of time, but then confidentially destroyed. As I say, we're talking 4 years down the line now. I don't think any councillor can be expected to keep evidence for 4 years. But so it's very difficult sometimes to try and think of the order of things that happened. If, for example, Mr Bloomfield had come direct to me when he found out his name was part of the approval, then perhaps I would have still have had the evidence then, and I could have gone back and said, oh, well, actually, you know, yes, you did say you agreed to it. Or, oh dear, I can see we've written down your house number wrong or something. You know, I could have looked at the evidence and found out what exactly went wrong. But by the time this was produced to me, you know, the evidence had been destroyed.
Chair, can I just come in with a point of clarification there?
You may.
Just to confirm the timeline. So Mr Bloomfield made his complaint almost immediately after he found out that his name had been included. So that was one thing. Also, just to clarify, 8 names were put forward, but one of those was Mr Bloomfield, and that was clearly erroneous, as we've all agreed. Just to be clear.
Thank you.
Have we done anything to check that any other recorded respondents have been?
No, that wasn't part of my investigation.
I thought I read in some of the papers that there was somebody who the house had been unoccupied for 2 years and yet they were still put forward.
That was an anecdotal comment that was made by one of the complainants. I think it might have been Mr Bloomfield who told me that, but that wasn't something that I could confirm.
Thank you, everyone. So I think we've... yes?
Councillor Lismore, can I just, sorry to come back to the 80% again. The 80% approval, roughly, was that going back, I believe one of the first surveys was done 3 years ago, the first knocking on doors. Was your 80% a sort of a conglomerate of all those 3 years, or was it a new 80%? A recency point I think I'm making about, did you think it was a current when you went into that meeting that you had 80% approval, or was it something you gathered over the years from your various exercises?
It was from all the times that we door knocked. So, as I say, I can't remember off the top of my head this particular, I keep going back to this particular elderly lady, but I can really remember her standing on her doorstep telling me this. I believe I forwarded her concerns to the NEP. As I say, I can't be absolutely sure, but just to the period of time that's concluded. But we, you know, if we'd have knocked on the residents' doors twice, 3 times and seen them 3 times and they changed their mind, we would have put that down, definitely. It wasn't like, no, you said the first time you were fine about it, you can't speak about it again. And also, when we door knocked, we did door knock every door again. We didn't just say, well, we've not had an answer for number 3 and number 7, so we'll only knock on number 3 and 7. We did door knock on all of them every time we visited the area.
Thank you. And just one further question on going back to the WhatsApp. I think in some of the paperwork it said that you believed you were entering into a private conversation or a private exchange on that WhatsApp. Just for my clarity, is that because that WhatsApp was on a private number, or was that actually on your number that's represented to you as a councillor?
I think I was just shocked that what I thought was a private conversation was recorded and, I'll be honest, used against me, because I was very shocked that this resident, and I say very rattled that this resident had accused Councillor Goss of whatever. That is not on. And I have said, I'm not sure if it's in the paperwork, that what perhaps because the resident said, oh, come round for a cup of tea, let's talk this out. And I said, no, I'm sorry. He'd crossed a line as far as I was aware. You know, anybody that accuses a councillor of corruption has crossed a line unless they have evidence to prove it. What perhaps I should have done is said, yep, okay, I will come and see you. And I think in my 20 years, that's the one and only time I've ever said no to a resident. But what I should have done is perhaps said, right, okay, yes, I'll come around, but I'll bring someone with me, perhaps another councillor with me, so that they can, if any more, you know, issues are raised, they can collaborate, they can, you know, show, you know, I won't just be the only one to listen to any phrases that are put out there. So yes, as I say, certainly as I say, we've taken these allegations very serious, because as I say, in 20 years, I've never had a complaint made against me from a resident. And it is not what we do as councillors. It isn't. And we have we want to do what the residents want, whether that's red lines or anything else, or not red lines. And so it has been deeply, deeply upsetting. It really has, to think that a resident thought we were trying to push something through that residents actually didn't want. Deeply hurtful, and we've taken it very, very seriously. And also certainly with Mr. Bloomfield, I've taken it very seriously, the upset that he has felt. Very, very, very much so. But, as I say, I was, certainly with Councillor Goss, and I don't believe within the pack, and I only just realised this afternoon, my colleague, Councillor Roger Buston, actually did a statement underlying his beliefs as well, that Councillor Goss's actions were political. If Councillor Goss had contacted me and just said, look, what you said that for? What's going on? I would have said, you know, look, Martin, I'm sorry, but you were being accused of corruption, and I think we could have cleared it up, you know, there and then. There have been times, I will be honest, when Councillor Goss has said on public, you know, Facebook and whatever things about me, I haven't made a complaint against him because it's not my style. I've spoken to Martin, or I've gone to his leader, and I've spoken to his leader and sort of said, look, can you just have a word with Martin, you know, and just calm it down a bit, you know. I think we can sort it out. I was trying to back up Councillor Goss, perhaps in a very clumsy way, and I apologise for that. But I genuinely was not going to accept that from that resident.
Any further questions, Sarah? No? Thank you. Councillor Dundas?
Thank you. Yeah, I've got a question for Councillor Lissimore and a question for Paula. And Councillor Lissimore, you don't have to answer this if you don't want to. If you want to take the fifth, as they say in all best detective dramas, you can. But in hindsight, bearing in mind that we've acknowledged the opinion of Mr. Bloomfield was accurately recorded, looking back, would you say that perhaps the survey in the way that it was done and the way the data was collected and verified perhaps wasn't, in hindsight, to the highest standard you'd want? And were you to do it again, you would perhaps look to do it differently? That's my question to you. And my question to Paula is, on the actual complaints on section 3 of our, the pack, section 7.0, standards of council conduct, we have in there, I do not bring my role or local authority into disrepute. I just want to clarify that that also hangs on the same phrase as the 1.1, I treat other councillors and members of public respect, in the sense that the phrase you are concerned about is the phrase put by Councillor Lissimore in the WhatsApp conversation that Councillor Goss interfered in Prettygate, because looking through it, I mean, I can't see Colchester City Council is mentioned anywhere in the entire exchange. So I struggle to see really in there where Colchester City Council has directly been brought into dispute, because it's not mentioned. My other question is over the timing of this. The screenshots were screenshot at 17:44. We can see on the page. That was presumably the time at which they were screenshotted, but I understood somewhere from in here this conversation happened late at night. Could you tell us what time it did occur, and then how long after we think it was screenshotted?
So the actual WhatsApp exchange took place at roughly 10 p.m. in the evening, over 2 separate evenings. I am not a forensic detective, so I cannot tell you how long after Mr. Spindler then did the screenshots. So we're going to have to assume that he did it quite quickly, but I honestly cannot say to you 100% that is the case. But yeah, the WhatsApp screenshots, you can clearly see on them the date and the time that those exchanges took place, and they were both late in the evening. Just to address your first point about the issue of bringing the local authority into disrepute, it would be my view that in the exchanges, Councillor Lissimore was representing Colchester City Council. She was in a WhatsApp exchange with a resident from the area in question. At no time was there any suggestion that this wasn't an exchange that was not concerning Colchester City Council business. So that would be my assertion there. And it's not again, just about what was said, it's about the fact that it was said within a WhatsApp exchange with a resident.
But for clarity, the phrase you're still concerned about is it's not corruption. Martin Goss interfered in Prettygate as the Colchester representative of the NEP, is it? Okay.
Yes.
Yes, sorry,
yes.
can I ask Sue a question?
Yes, yes.
What
You
to
respond
answer.
on that. Or take the fifth. As
As I've said, we've taken these issues very, very seriously as a team, very, very much so. And yes, if we did this in the future, we would do things very, very differently. However, since this has happened, the NEP have reinforced their procedures and have informed us that they would like to see a petition. As I said, if the NEP had said in the first place, even though we'd already put an application in for Baden-Powell and that had been approved and the red lines had been drawn, nowhere in that procedure at any time was it ever said, where's the petition? Why have you not done a petition? Where's the residents' names and addresses? At no time, I didn't lead on that one, that particular application, but I've spoken to my colleague who did lead on it, and at no time were we ever asked for a petition, and at no time were we ever asked for the names and addresses of residents. So why would we do things any differently with this application. Yes, if we put an application in now, we would do things differently because the NEP have made it clear that they want a petition. But at the time, we were not aware they wanted a petition, and we followed the NEP procedure that they had told us that they wanted this particular area. So if you're looking at a particular junction, you need to do the top of the junction, you need to do round the junction, going back, I don't know, 3-4 houses. We always did over what they recommended. Anyway, we went to more houses than what they actually recommended. Yes, it was certainly said yesterday during the hearing. One particular councillor said that why did we take the lead on this and why didn't the residents take the lead on it? Because in the past, you know, when they've done this, put these schemes in the past, they've let residents take the lead on it. I would, if a resident took the lead on a particular scheme, I would be perhaps a little bit concerned that they may be a little bit biased because of where they live compared to getting a full hat of responses from everyone who would be affected by it. But as I say, if we put an application in now, we would most certainly do a petition because that is what the NEP has now said that they want. But at the time, we did what they said.
Thank you, Councillor Lismore. I know I've certainly had it drummed into me since we're doing this. We've always done petitions, but I understand, you know, each party, and as you say, you've already did it that way on Baden Powell Drive, so yes, so why would it be any different? So any further questions from anyone? So do you consider we've covered points 3 and points 4, Mr. Weavers?
Thank you, Chair. I think yes, you move on to point 5 and invite on the summing if anybody wants to sum up their respective parties. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we're moving on to 5.1. So the investigating officer, Paula, if you would like to sum up the complaint, please.
Thank you. I won't go into too much detail because my conclusions are all listed in detail on page 7 through to 9 in your pack. But just in summary, the complaint from Mr. Bloomfield that his name was included in as a supporter, my conclusion is that this was a breach of the Colchester City Council Code of Conduct. With regards to Mr. Spindler's complaints, I did not find that there was any breach in those matters. And in the case of Councillor Martin Goss's complaints, I did find that there was a breach of the Code of Conduct in relation to the WhatsApp exchange. But I don't think I need to go into too much more detail other than that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Paula. And I would now like to invite Councillor Sue Lismore, if you would like to sum up your case.
Thank you. As I say, we took this very, very seriously, and I've had many sleepless nights over it because we do not want residents to feel that they have been pushed through, with a scheme that they don't want. So we did take it very seriously. As I say, we did a sort of internal audit, if you want to call it that, to ensure that any surveys that we do in the future, to make sure that this does not happen again, what happened with Mr. Bloomfield. Certainly with the issues with 2 and 3, I do believe that there is a political drive there, and it was mentioned that Mr. Spindler particularly is related to 2 Lib Dem councillors. Certainly, as I say, with Councillor Goss, if he had come to me and just said, what did you say that for? I could have explained to him. As I say, it may have been clumsy, but I take an accusation of corruption incredibly seriously. It's, as I say, we're certainly very sorry to Mr. Bloomfield, the angst that he has been through with this, and unreservedly apologise to him for that angst that has been caused.
Thank you, Councillor Lismore. Right, having from both the investigator and Councillor Solis-Moore. I believe we now retire to deliberate in private to discuss the complaint between us, and we will return. Thank you very much. Thank you everybody for waiting while we deliberated, and we have a decision notice. Okay, just to go ahead and read that out, Mr. Reeves, thank you. So decision notice is the Governance and Audit Hearing Subcommittee, in consultation with the independent person appointed to assist it, has carefully considered the alleged breaches of the council members' code of conduct which were contained in the independent investigating officer's report, and we made the following determinations in respect of the complaints which have been received. The complaint made by Robert Bloomfield. The Hearings Subcommittee partially upholds the findings of the investigating officer that the Code of Conduct of Colchester City Council had been breached, specifically in relation to exercising reasonable care and diligence. It does not uphold the finding in relation to acting with integrity and honesty. In respect to the complaints made by Stuart Spindler, the Hearings Subcommittee upholds the findings of the investigating officer that the Code of Conduct of Colchester City Council had not been breached. With regards to the complaint made by Councillor Goss, the Hearings Subcommittee partially upholds the findings of the investigating officer that the Code of Conduct of Colchester City Council had been breached, specifically in relation to treating other councillors and members of the public with respect. It does not uphold the finding in relation to bringing my role as a councillor or local authority into disrepute. Full reasoning will be given in the written decision notice. Right, so that is our decisions. So we will now consider any representations from Paula as the investigator and or Councillor Sue Lismore as to whether any action should be taken and what form any action should take. And then we will deliberate that in private. Thank you. So I invite, you wish to make any recommendations or representations?
Just to say that I concur with the findings of the panel. As was apparent yesterday, I think Councillor Lismore would be helpful if apologies were made to the parties that made the complaints, but other than that I don't have anything else to add. Additionally, with regards to the WhatsApp exchanges and the communications, I did recommend that some training should be, refresher training should be undertaken by Councillor Lismore, in particular with regards to resident communications.
Thank you, Paula. Councillor Lismore, do you have anything you would like to add?
Just to say thank you for the time you've taken on this. As we just mentioned earlier, this has been a very long, protracted investigation and has taken up a lot of officers' time and your time here tonight as well. So I very much appreciate that time that you've all given on it. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lismore. Right, there we will retire once more to deliberate in private to consider what, if any, actions should be taken, and we will do that in consultation with our independent person. Thank you once again for bearing with us while we took that short break to deliberate the actions. So, following further deliberation and having taken consideration of the representations made by the investigating officer and Councillor Lissimore at the hearing subcommittee has decided that the following actions are proportionate to the breaches of the Code of Conduct. 1. The monitoring officer be instructed to arrange refresher training for Councillor Lissimore regarding the Member Code of Conduct, with particular emphasis on communications with residents and use of social media whilst acting in the capacity of a member for Colchester City Council. Action 2. Councillor Lissimore be required to issue a written apology to Mr Bloomfield. And that is the extent of our recommendations. Do we ask for any more comments or no? That's it. Well, in that case, we are done. Everybody happy? Yep. Good. I'll bring this meeting to a close. Thank you very much.